them to defend.
And as Chris was saying earlier, when he does come out on the balcony, we will have an immediate impression by the way he is dressed and by the way he addresses the crowd. You remember that Pope Francis came out and said, brothers and sisters, good evening. And that impressed everybody because it was such informal language compared to what popes usually do. So we'll have an automatic impression, whoever he is.
Everything they say, do, and wear will, in fact, have meaning and will be parsed as such, right?
Absolutely.
What is going on right now inside the Sistine Chapel? Okay, we've got the Room of Tears. We've got the vestments being put on. Do the cardinals get up and walk out? What is their next step? Are they looking to decompress? How does this work going forward?
Just one word on that Room of Tears. Again, there's a little joke about John the 23rd. When he went into that room, he was a man of a large stature. And he looked at himself in the mirror and said, this man's not going to look good on TV. So there may be some of that going on at the moment. But then, very importantly, each cardinal goes to the new pope and pledges obedience and respect. It's a moving moment because there was a runner-up, we can say. And it's a very touching moment, I think, too, that going back to what Delia was saying, there are divisions, absolutely, but the main work of this new pope is to bring unity to the church.
And because they voted so quickly, likely in 4 votes, that's a sign the cardinals agree on that, correct?
That's really important. That's really important.
I think the last thing this group of cardinals wanted to do was appear divided, particularly because of what Delia was talking about. They are well aware that a part of the Francis legacy was a sort of deepening of the divisions inside the Catholic Church, and that there is a need for unity. And so they wanted to very quickly rally around this new figure to present him not as the head of a faction in the church, but as the head of the entire church.
Sean, what do you think job one is for the new pope? First thing on the agenda should be, or will likely be?
Well, we always say that the fundamental job of a pope is to confirm the brothers and sisters in the faith. That is, to give them a sense of hope that this faith has life, that there is fire under the ashes, so to speak. And that's why we're saying that these first moments on the balcony are so absolutely critical, because it sets a tone. And if the Pope comes out, which I am quite confident he will, and is warm and joyful himself, because this is a crowd that desperately wants to fall in love with this man. Okay? So there is very little he actually has to do to win them over. And I'm sure he will do it.
And speaking of that crowd, Tony DeCopel is down in the square. Tony?
Nora, thank you for coming back to me. I've got so much more to say. It's been a beautiful experience. It's hard to fight back tears. Each and every person here is feeling something, and it is an ocean of emotions. I said earlier that some of the different branches of the Christian, all Christians in a real sense, not the branch of the church, but the original trunk. And that's what I mean by that universality. And people who find themselves here by chance, they really feel it is a gift. They tell me they feel chosen for this moment. Like the work of the electors happened in there, but in some sense, they were also part of the act, the creation, the choice of this Pope. And when the smoke went up, they all yelled, "Hello, Papa!" And I can only imagine what they'll say when the Pope actually emerges out there onto the balcony. Another matter here is there are, of course, flags that people are waving, but there are also items that they want blessed. There are rosemaries, there are a crucifix, there are backpacks and T-shirts and tokens from their lives that are important for some reason. There was even a woman from Pittsburgh who had, if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, the terrible towel, the yellow towel they wave at football games. She held that up and wanted a picture in front of the church. People come from all over for so many different reasons, but they all get the same thing, which is a truly magical moment in the deep streams of time and history, and it is just so beautiful.
Tony DeCopel, thank you so
Father
much.
Figueroa, is this a time for a rosary? Just asking.
I think many rosaries have been said in these days.
In this moment right now?
Absolutely. We've been praying for a good successor to Francis. And I believe we were just talking about Our Lady Untie of Knots.
Yes.
Is that true, Nora?
Yes.
A great devotion of Pope Francis, and Our Lady has untied this knot for us.
Yes.
And our Chris Livesay is inside, was inside the St. Peter's Basilica today. Went to Mass. Chris, what are your thoughts at the moment?
Well, I was inside the Church of St. Mary Major. That is a papal basilica, and it happens to be where Pope Francis was buried. And what's significant about it is there was a traditional Latin Mass that took place there. This was somewhat controversial because Pope Francis was actually quite restrictive of the Latin Mass during his papacy, and it was standing room only. And this was a lot of people who told me that while the church is now celebrating and celebrating the incoming Pope, there are a lot of people in the Catholic Church who are also looking at this moment with trepidation and who will step out on that balcony. For them, traditionalists, more conservative members of the church, if they see somebody who's more closely aligned with Francis, they might be nervous about that for a variety of reasons. I mean, just picture it. There was this Latin Mass that proceeded right in front of the tomb of Pope Francis. No more visual or stronger symbol can I think of to show that there are people in the church who didn't always fall in line with his opinions, with his role as the Pope. For instance, when he commented on priests blessing gay unions and then backtracked on that, for instance, when he spoke to you, Nora, in that historic interview and said, well, I was just blessing the individuals in that union. A lot of Catholics felt confused and felt that with all of Pope Francis's many strengths, clarity was not one of them. Just days ago, I interviewed Cardinal Gerhard Müller, a sort of hero of the conservative wing of the Catholic Church, and he said what he wants to see, the person who steps out on that balcony, is somebody who can restore clarity to the Catholic Church.
All right. Chris Livesay, thank you so much. And what you are seeing now is the Swiss Guard, as well as the Vatican band down there below. And what we should note also is that 3 popes in a row now have been elected on the second day of the conclave. A remarkable set of events, meaning, of course, these cardinals move much more quickly than they have in the past, which is a sign for the Catholic Church. I want to go to Seth Doan. He is down in St. Peter's Square. And Seth, you must be seeing firsthand the crowds that are just streaming into the square to witness this moment, to see for themselves who the new Holy Father is.
You're absolutely right, Nora. I just want to give you a sense of what it's like to be here right now. If you could, Sam, take a look around here. It is packed. We are getting more and more crunched in this space as tens of thousands of people, Sam is giving you a sense here, are filling the square, coming down Via della Conciliazione, the main promenade leading up here. You can see the media, of course, there. We've been looking around and seeing nuns and priests in the windows, on the balconies here. A lot of these buildings are owned by the Vatican, so even though we're technically in Rome, this is Vatican property around us, and we're seeing the nuns and priests looking out, taking selfies. Turn around here, Sam, also. Come to your left, just to give you a sense of how packed it is at this point. When we were here, people were around and people were looking, but now that they've heard there's a new pope, we're sandwiched in here, and you can see the sun is kind of going behind St. Peter's Basilica, so it's very hard for people to know exactly what's happening. We're watching these big screens, watching some of the Swiss Guards, watching the band, but people are really arching their necks and say, when is the Pope going to come? What exactly is happening? There is a sense of joy, there's a sense of curiosity, a little bit of wonder.
Students here at K-State are getting those experiences that really prepare them for the future.
We're all trailblazers and we're out here
Rome, and that's in part why this crowd is not only joyful, but they're hot down there. No doubt they are hot, but willing to wait, because it's not just to see the new pope, it's to hear what he is going to say. And to get a reminder, too, about just what a global event this is. Bells are ringing at churches all around the world. My 17-year-old son is texting me, "Who is the Pope?" So we should talk about that. Who could be the next Pope? People want to know. What's happening right now?
Well, I think the fact that the cardinals, 133 of them, the largest number in history, 2,000 years, have rallied around one figure after 4 votes is very significant. I really do believe it's one of those leading contenders, and dare I say it could well be the past Secretary of State. Obviously, we were hearing about other cardinals, Cardinal Luis Tagle from the Philippines. We were hearing about Cardinal Matteo Zuppi, the president of the Bishops' Conference. We were hearing about Cardinal Peter Erdo, more to the right. I rather suspect it is one of those leading candidates.
Well, I think also with 133, if they needed to come and converge on one candidate, it might be the one that they thought had the most experience and was most known to them, which may be the Secretary of State.
There's a good possibility of that. I mean, I think what is clear is that in a group of cardinal electors, again, 133, largest number in history, where all of these cardinals would say they did not know one another particularly well, to come to a consensus this quickly would suggest they did pick somebody who was a relatively known quantity, who even if they didn't know him personally, felt that he had played enough of an institutional public role that they had a sense of who the man was.
People are chanting down there in the square. Can't make out exactly what they're saying, but we're looking as members of the Italian military have joined in the march, the procession into St. Peter's Square. People are still trying to make their way in and flood the square and enjoy the moment. It has been about a half hour since we saw the white smoke, which leads us to wonder what exactly is going on inside there. What are they doing? What might they be doing right now?
Well, you know, Maurice, I was thinking about that because I think you should put yourself in the feet of the Pope. There's
Cardinal
O'Malley down there with
Archbishop of Boston.
Franciscan brothers. They may well be hoping to see a Franciscan come to the loggia. That other picture is the central balcony of St. Peter's, where the Pope will step out and where we will hear the Habemus Papam.
Archbishop Gallagher, who is the #2 to the Secretary of State as well. So these were non-voting cardinals and church officials who have come out as well.
Also very interested to know. They don't know either. But, you know,
his job sort of depends on the answer to this question.
But to answer Maurice's question, one thing that the new Holy Father will do, right, is go pray by himself in the Pauline Chapel,
and there
right?
is an amazing painting of Michelangelo, the last painting of his, when he was 70 years old in that chapel. It's stark. It's almost severe. St. Peter on his back on a cross. And he stares at the new Pope, and the new Pope stares at him. And St. Peter is saying to the new Pope, "Are you willing to lay down your life as I laid my life for the sheep?"
I was thinking exactly that we have all this fanfare out here, but the man who has just been elected Pope, Pope Benedict said when he heard his name, he felt like he was being led to the guillotine. It is a massive responsibility, and you can only imagine the trepidation that he has before he comes out on that balcony.
As they feel the weight of the job, right? When we saw it on the cardinals' faces as they entered the conclave, the gravity, the solemnity, you could feel it as they went in there. Now just imagine that one of them is coming out with this massive job.
Yes, and coming out after Francis, too.
Yeah.
So
those are some awfully big shoes to fill, not to mention the shoes of the fishermen, referring to St. Peter. But, you know, if you think about what popular expectations of a pope are, we expect a pope to be an intellectual giant. We want him to be a global statesman playing on the global stage. We want him to be a Fortune 500 CEA. We want him to be a media rock star. And, by the way, we want him to be a living saint. Now, any one of these things is difficult to do well. You roll them all up together, it is a prescription for, as you said, a bone-crushing burden. And that's why the enormity of this moment, when it descends upon anyone who is now stepping into this role. Just think about the emotion that you must be feeling. And I think that's why that moment of prayer in the Pauline Chapel is so important, because it is a reminder, yes, I have assumed this enormous burden, but ultimately, I'm not in this alone. I have St. Peter to intercede for me, and I ultimately have God to rely on. You know, we talked earlier about Pope John the 23rd. One of the things that Pope John famously said is that I could sleep at night knowing that ultimately God is in charge of the church, not me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just looking at this, that's the reason I believe that this enormous crowd, and people are literally running through the streets of Rome now to come to this piazza, get behind this new pope. I'm thinking of other elections, political elections. There's joy, but there's also an enormous amount of sadness.
Yes.
There's an enormous amount of bitterness. That's not happening here.
And talking about running into, let's go down now to Tony DeCopel, who is in St. Peter's Square, who is running into people in St. Peter's Square that he has met in the past couple days while doing reporting. Tony?
It's an amazing thing. I've got two quick notes, one on connections and the other on change. When it comes to connections, we're in a crowd of thousands, tens of thousands. And over the last 2 days, we've talked to dozens of people. In the last few moments, we have run into not one, not two, but 3 different people from our journey. One in particular, John Swerk from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as I recall, is here for a conference of tattoo artists. He ran into us, asked if we thought he should go here. He said he changed his plans, left the conference, turned around to be here. He thanked us for that reminder and that reconnection to his faith. That was an amazing moment. And then when it comes to change, wandering around here the last few days, you see the travel on people's faces, the long journeys, the expensive flights, the $900 Airbnbs because everybody jacked up the price, the hot sun, the tough weather, the colder night last night. In an instant, when that smoke came out, all of that fell away. The burden of the journey, the burden of the travel lifted. And that also feels like what contributes to the sense of elation, almost a floating feeling here in the crowd of thousands.
Thank you, Tony. And Monsignor, as I'm watching this, I can't help but think what it's like to be a priest as you are, and a priest as this next pope will be, because after all, you're a man. You're a human. But there are expectations placed upon you that are greater than anything else anybody else has to deal with. I know that's what you signed up for, and I know that's what this cardinal who's about to be elevated has signed up for, but can you give us a peek inside what that's like?
Yeah, you're almost giving me the shivers. Because effectively, the new Holy Father is our boss. But even before being a boss, he is our Father. So we do look to the Holy Father for direction in our priesthood. We look for encouragement. We look for those qualities that we've seen in John Paul II, in Benedict, and in Francis. John Paul II, who opened people's hearts. Benedict, who filled people's hearts with good doctrine. And Francis, that compassion, that mercy. It's going to be fascinating. This is a magical moment for us as priests to know what gift does this newly Holy Father bring to the world. And he's going to be helped, just to piggyback on what John and Delia said, he's going to be helped above all by the grace of the Holy Spirit.
Beautifully said, beautifully said. Seth Doan is down there with the crowd and talking to people. Seth?
That's right, ever less space to speak with people, but I'm here with Jude Wassel from Massachusetts. Describe this moment, this feeling, when you looked up and saw white smoke.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely crazy. I was just down the square a little bit, and we started running up as soon as we heard that there was white smoke and everyone was cheering. So it's just a lot of anticipation, and you can feel the excitement. It's kind of muddled right now because he's not out, obviously, but it's a lot of anticipation.
What do you want to see? You're Catholic, you said. Mm-hmm. Who do you want to be Pope? What do you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done my research as much as I should have on the upcoming cardinals and who's looking like a a prime candidate kind of, but I'm really blessed to be here for this experience, and I think every Catholic here and everyone is just thankful for a new pope so soon. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, that was one of the big things here. Thank you very much, Jude. Was showing unity, having a pope selected within a couple of days. We were talking just yesterday at John Allen's prediction that it would come by the end of the week. The Catholic Church really wanted to show unity behind a figure who could lead it, and people here in the crowd were certainly hoping to see the same. They said, we'll wait as long as it takes, but there's a lot of joy that it's happened so quickly. Back to you.
All right, Seth Doan, thanks so much. And, shout out to John Allen, Delia Gallagher, and Monsignor Figueredo. Each of them was predicting this would happen today by about this time. So that's pretty impressive.
Well, when you're on your third conclave, you kind of get it.
Yeah, in all fairness, we are conditioned to expect this because it happened in 2005, happened in 2013, and now it has happened again.
But I was also just thinking, how strange is it that we've done Francis papacy is done.
Right.
Yeah. And that's odd.
Yeah.
We're here every day with the popes and listening to them and living the papacy so fully.
And I think the interview that Seth just did with the young man from Massachusetts is instructive, because while all of us, including myself, have a bunch of note cards here and have studied all of the cardinals or the popefuls, as we call them, for most Catholics, they've not been looking at all the biographical details. And that's why this moment that we are approaching in just minutes, when we will learn who the new pope is important, because also he can set a new tone, he can create new impressions, he can garner new followers of the Catholic Church if he comes across in a way that is likable.
And I think a lot of people like to see what country he's from. That's really where they get excited to understand. What we see so many flags down there, and I think people around the world, that's really the first thing they think of.
Well,
right?
Pope Francis was the first in so many ways. The first Francis of all of the 267 popes. The first from the Americas. The first Jesuit. Will this be a groundbreaking Holy Father? Will he be the first from Africa, the first from Asia, or will we return to an Italian pope?
And that is really true. The last pope who came out, Francis, he was a surprise. He was a surprise. We could be surprised again this evening. But something to go back on, we're pledging allegiance not to the man, whether it's Parolin or Tagle, whoever it is, we're pledging allegiance to the successor of Peter.
Yeah.
That's why he takes on a new name, by the way, because he changes character. As in baptism, we take on a name, in a religious profession, we take on a new name. He's taking on a new name because he's walking into a new mission as the successor of Peter.
It's a whole other level. I think what we were touching on here a second ago is that this is a moment for humanity, for the people. And I'm wondering, Monsignor, as you look at these people's faces, you see them right there. What do you see? What do you see in those faces?
I really see joy and hope. That was the title of a document of the Second Vatican Council, Gaudium et Spes. There is great joy that we will have a new pope. That's really important, by the way, because the papacy is a monarchy, and the pope is essential for the church to run, for this church to run. So that is key, that we have that joy that this pope has been elected, but also great hope now. Hope of, in this Jubilee year of hope, that this new Holy Father is going to give us direction to go forward.
There is a lot of hope among Romans who are running through the streets that they make it here in time.
Beginning with that kind of hope.
That's right, and Chris Livesay has more on that. Chris?
That's right, Nora. Of course, we don't know who the next pope is going to be, but if locals have anything to say about it, it'll be the hometown hero, Cardinal Zuppi. We will see fireworks go off around the city. That's what they told me when I went to the bar or the cafe that he would go to every morning for his croissant and his coffee. The people playing cards there, we said, we want Don Matteo or Father Matteo. That's what he was known as when he was the parish priest in Santa Maria in Trastevere, a picturesque neighborhood not too far from here. It has been 3 papacies since there's been an Italian Pope. That was after centuries of an Italian monopoly. So for Italians, especially Romans, they're saying enough is enough already. The time has come to have an Italian Pope. Especially, remember, it's not just the Pope of the entire 1.4 billion Catholic Church members, but it's also the Bishop of Rome. So from their perspective, it's time for Don Matteo. Back to you.
All right, the Bishop of Rome, Chris Livesay, thank you so much. The camera, as you can see, is trained on the loggia, the balcony where the new Pope will come and address the crowd and address the world. What a moment that is going to be. John, it's been about 45, 46 minutes since the new Pope, since we saw the white smoke. The last time it took about an hour and 15 or so for Francis to come out and speak. What do you think is happening at this moment?
Well, the Cardinals will be finishing up their greetings to the next Pope, to the new Pope, as Monsignor said, pledging their loyalty, but in many cases, also just exchanging emotions of the moment and wishing him well, you know. And probably the most fundamental thing is promising to pray for him. Although Pope Francis, you know, whenever somebody would say, I'm going to pray for you, his joking answer always was for or against, right? So we'll see if the new Pope continues that line. But, you know, Nora, to a point you were making earlier, I was thinking, I don't know that there is any office on the face of the planet where the new occupant enjoys an immediate benefit of the doubt greater than the papacy. You know, when it's election night in America and we finally know who won, half of the country is elated and half the country is crushed. That's not the case here. Everyone in this crowd and all of those 1.4 billion Catholics around the world instantaneously want to like the new Pope. They want to fall in love with this man. And so, in a sense, the bar is set fairly low. I mean, if he just comes across as nice and human, almost, people will fall all over themselves to try to support him and to have his back, so to speak, in the early stages of this papacy. Yes, left-right debates and the contentious issues in the church will come, but the primal Catholic instinct is you want to love your Pope.
And it's also interesting that each of the cardinals who voted, 133 of them, their ballots have been burned. So they don't, the Pope doesn't know who voted for or against him.
Technically,
so
you shouldn't have that information.
Yeah, everybody's on the team unless somebody speaks.
Sometimes it comes out, and, you know, if you know the cardinals and you know who your friends are and you know the numbers, which they do, they have a clue. And how popular
I think to that point, it is interesting. There have been reports of some horse trading going on, pledges of allegiance in order to give someone votes, in order to set something up. How likely is that, Monsignor, that happened, that someone said, look, if you support me, I may give you this position?
It's inevitable. It's inevitable because there is a need to rally behind one candidate. It happened with Pope Benedict, it happened with Pope Francis, and so I really do believe something of that happened today. Certainly, the Pope who's going to come to us, he went forward, but he needed that threshold of 89 votes. That's quite large.
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds. And certainly one of the other cardinals who was perhaps behind him, the word is perhaps he asked his supporters to give those votes to the Pope, who will come out on that balcony, isn't it wonderful, in just a few minutes' time.
John, what do you
think?
think?
Just to fill out what the Monsignor is not saying, because of course he is a man of the cloth, is there have been reports that if the Secretary of State, Parolin, is the next Pope, that perhaps there was an agreement that was made with Cardinal Tagle of the Philippines. We don't know if that's true, but I am sharing what some of the rumors were surrounding this, if there were such horse trading and an alliance that went on to move this quickly.
Are you saying there's politics inside this?
And you joke, but there are some people who will be very scandalized to hear that kind of thing because, you know, the traditional Catholic belief is that the conclave unfolds under the guidance of the Holy Spirit. And so some people expect this to be a very pious exercise. But, you know, as the famous medieval Catholic theologian Thomas Aquinas reminded us, grace builds on nature. It doesn't cancel it out. What that means is the fact that there's this spiritual dimension to this process doesn't make it any less human, and therefore doesn't make it any less political. If you're going to get to a 2/3 vote and you're going to do it in 4 ballots, there had to be some kind of sausage grinding going on behind the scenes.
Politics, after all, there are people involved, right?
This is the world's oldest democratic exercise, and where there is democracy, my friend, there are politics.
And as we know from Pope Francis himself, after lunch on the second day, he had a sign that the votes were starting to coalesce behind him.
That's exactly what happened. Pope Francis went back as Cardinal Bergoglio. There was a table, lunchtime, with 1 seat left on it. A group of Italian cardinals, and they beckoned Francis to come to their table, and they gave him a question time on what are his positions on liberation theology, on the ordination of women, etc. And Pope Francis says I didn't understand it at that time. But then when he was going to the lift, one of the cardinals asked him, "Is it true you only have 1 lung?" And he said, "No, I have half a lung." But then he said, "It became really dangerous for me. I knew that the election was nearing in on me."
Wow. So, Delia, as you hear these crowds singing songs and chanting, almost at a level of a football game, right? And I mean that in terms of a soccer match here in Europe. What do you think of that?
Well, I just think it's a beautiful representation of the universal church. That's what Catholic means. And even though many of those people may not be Catholic, I think obviously there is a wonderful attraction to the majesty and pageantry of the election of a new pope who symbolizes this wonderful moral authority for many people, symbolizes a tradition which has great respect around the world. And I think that is why we see so much interest. Why is there so much interest in this? This could just be a thing for Catholics, but it's a thing for the entire world. And we said that before. Even secular people are interested to know who the Pope is. And part of that is because he does stand as a moral authority
in fact,
in the world.
The first address that he will give on this balcony is called the Urbi et Orbi, which means to this city of Rome, I'm the Bishop of Rome, but to the entire world as well.
It is 7 p.m. here in Rome, 1 p.m. in the East, and it was just about an hour ago that white smoke billowed from the Sistine Chapel chimney, alerting the world that a new pope was elected. We witnessed it. Oh my gosh, the crowd went wild.
Electric moment.
It really was.
Unlike
the nuns right over here were screaming. It was just incredible, a moment people will never forget. The new pontiff will appear. That will happen shortly on the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica.
All eyes are trained on that balcony. It was the unbelievable moment. We're going to show it to you here. The crowd realized there was a new leader of the Roman Catholic Church. Listen.
You never forget that moment there. Let's go now to CBS Morning's co-host, Tony DeCopel. He is in St. Peter's Square. Tony?
Hey, good to see you guys again. It's so amazing to experience the stages of emotion down here. They had that moment as the smoke came out, which you just played. People had their phones out, of course. They're recording it because they want to share it with folks back home. Then there's the attempt. You see people trying to send the videos and the text. The cell service is so bad it's not going through. So they reach the old-fashioned method. They make a phone call. I've been looking around, and it's phone call after phone call after phone call. I've been yelling out, "Who are you calling? Who are you calling?" It's very often, Mom. You'll never guess where I am. You'll be so happy to know. They call their wives. They call their children. I met a man named Matt, a father from Kansas, Lawrence, Kansas. He's the reporter on the scene here. Happened to be here for a trip, but his daughter Kate's Catholic school there, I want to get this right, the Corpus Christi Catholic School in Lawrence, Kansas. They said, "Could you shoot some video for us?" I'm here to tell you, Kate, your dad's doing a great job. He's trying to send the
Domino's new Parmesan stuffed crust pizza tastes like never before. Because Domino's has never had stuffed crust before.
seconds earlier, there were these seagulls on the rooftop. And, you know, people get a little punchy, they get impatient watching this whole thing unfold. And everyone saw signs in these birds. And what does that mean? What could it mean? Is something about to happen? And we'd seen that played out over the last day, right? Many times. But this time it was different. There was a baby seagull. There were two full-grown ones and a baby seagull. Did it mean something? Did it lead to this? Was it a harbinger? We just don't know. But it was kind of cool.
But that's exactly what the spirit of this place is about. We talk so much about political things and issues and so on, and we forget about the entire spirituality of the Catholic Church, which is so much about signs, about providence, about saints. You know, so that is a massive part of what draws people to this place, and a huge part of what the Pope represents for the Catholic Church.
And I was watching those seagulls. I call them the holy seagulls. But it was beautiful because a little chick was feeding from the mother. And that's a powerful symbol, because Jesus asked Peter, the first pope, feed my sheep. Is there a greater symbol, a greater sign than that was given just as that smoke?
What we have here is a parable writing itself live on television for all the world to see. How about that for a moment?
Yes, and that will be one of the discussions, no doubt, about whether this new Holy Father will have a pastoral approach that has been similar to Pope Francis. Was praised that Pope Francis really did reach out to the peripheries in an attempt to put the focus back on the poor and the marginalized.
Yeah. Now, of course, to be fair, we have to accept the fact that there is not going to be another Pope Francis. Even if this Pope steps out and we learn he's taken the name Francis II, that doesn't mean he's going to be a photocopy of the man who came before. Each pope brings his own personality.
Cardinal Ouellet.
There we see Cardinal Mark
Cardinal
Cardinal Casper.
Yeah.
Former Archbishop of Quebec City in Canada, and then head of the Vatican's Congregation for Bishops.
And we see flags from all over the world.
All over the world.
And in the crowd is our Seth Doan one more time. Seth, what do you have?
Don't move. I'm just in the middle of this crowd here. It's getting ever tighter, as you can tell. Tens of thousands of people are packed. And it's interesting to hear why so many people are here for so many different reasons, from so many different countries. We're seeing people leaning out of windows, leaning out of balconies. And I'm struck by how many times, living here in Rome for so many years, how many times I walked through the square and different holidays, and Easter, at Christmas when the Christmas tree was up, at night, late at night when there was no one there. And then, of course, just after the death of Pope Francis, how much the mood, the energy really changes and really reflects what's happening. I was just speaking with some young women from Italy behind me, and I said, how are you feeling? She said, well, actually a little anxious. She said, I'm wondering who it will be. I wonder what direction the church might take. So there is such a range of emotions here. I'm also thinking about all the people who said they would come here the instant they heard. A Syrian refugee who credits his life here in Italy to the open policies of Pope Francis and really welcoming migrants. He said, as soon as I hear that there is a new pope, I'm going to come and see who it is. Of course, that's the question on everyone's mind. Everyone now, as that sun sets behind St. Peter's Basilica, and it's a little bit harder to see from our vantage point, the big question is, who will it be?
That is the question.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Seth. As we look at the loggia right there, that is the balcony. It has been an hour since we saw the white smoke. And so that's about the time frame in which Pope Francis appeared, maybe an hour, hour 15. We're right in that window. So it could happen at any moment here. We are ready and standing by, and so is the crowd. You can hear them.
Maurice, it was exactly at this time, in fact, 7:07, that Pope Francis came out on that balcony.
Wow, just incredible. And we saw just a glimpse, Sister Raffaele, and I think it's important to note who she is, one of the highest ranking women at the Vatican.
And that really is something that Francis did. We should not really forget. He named women to top positions here at the Vatican. And often when asked, why did you name women? He would say they do things much better.
Yes. He said that in his final week before he died. When he went to that prison to wash the feet of the prisoners, he talked about the role and the importance of women. Chris Livesay has followed this Pope as our Rome-based correspondent so closely. Chris?
That's right, Nora. You know, when you look into the sea of people waving flags from all corners of the world, it's a reflection not just of the universal church, but of the papacy of Francis. He was really the Pope of the peripheries, and he didn't just go to far-flung places. He made new cardinals when he went there. So that periphery could now make its way into St. Peter's. We might see an even more diverse pope than we've seen in a very long time. Remember, John Paul II, with his papacy, kind of blew open that Italian monopoly that had reigned for centuries. And then with Pope Francis, he blew open that European monopoly that had been there even longer. And now there's really an openness, the sense that the next pope could come from places like Africa or Asia, both continents that had very strong popefuls or candidates, contenders for the papacy. As we all watch that balcony, there's a real tapestry of personalities and nationalities that could come out and be our next pope.
Okay, Chris, thank you. And as we watch these images, I'm thinking of some of the pilgrims I've met over the past few days. We had a woman we talked with named Liz from Houston. She was supposed to be here at 7 a.m. yesterday, landed instead at 7 a.m. today, had to spend 12 hours on the ground in Newark because of plane issues. She fought through it, spent a night in a hotel, and made it here, and was so excited. She was here in time to see the black smoke, and she was so just popping with excitement as if she had just had an espresso. And so I only hope she's down there right now. I just want to speak to her, give her a hug, quite frankly, because she was so into this moment and how much it means to her. And I just extrapolate that out. This is tens of thousands of people feeling basically the same way right now.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, that experience, you multiply it by 1,000 times, by 10,000 times, and in a virtual sense, by millions of times all around the world. That's what the world is feeling right now. Again, to the point that we've all been making since the beginning, the papacy is an absolutely unique institution on the global stage that is invested with the hopes and dreams and also the fears and the anxieties, not just of the Catholic Church, but in a sense of the whole world.
And to a lot of people, the world may seem to be on fire with wars, you know, in the Middle East and in Pakistan and India and, you know, Ukraine and parts of Africa and on and on and on. And there's a need for hope, right? Yeah. What does the Pope have to say to the people to make them feel better?
Well, I think his presence, frankly, speaks more than anything he can actually say. So we have traveled quite a lot with the Pope, Pope Francis, Pope Benedict, Pope John Paul II, around the world. And so a lot of people don't necessarily hear the Pope's speeches, but his presence or the gestures, which John Paul II and Francis were very good at, speak volumes. And I mean, how many of us can think of all of the gestures of Pope Francis, all of the wonderful things that he did here in the square during COVID, blessing the square on his own, or the hugging of the people. That's the kind of presence that I think matters.
But Maurice raises a good point, which is if they have chosen a statesman to be the next pope, the former Secretary of State here at the Vatican, that is significant. And certainly the message that the cardinals sent jointly in that statement the very last day on Monday before they went into this lockdown, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the fact that, for instance, should it be Cardinal Parolin, and of course we don't know that.
Yes.
And I want to put an exclamation point on that because we have to leave open the possibility of surprise. But should it be Cardinal Parolin? Sure.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Now we know. Now we're going to have a moment.
I'm going to have the Monsignor explain what we're going to hear right now. A new pontiff about to be announced.
We are going to see Cardinal Momberti, a French cardinal, come out and say to us, I announce to you,
can you tell who
great news, good news, Habemus Papam.
Annuncio vobis gaudium magnum. Habemus Papam. Eminentissimum, ac reverendissimum Dominum, Dominum Robertum Franciscum, Sancte Romane Ecclesiae, Cardinalem Prevost, qui sibi nomen imposuit Leonem decimum quartum.
This is stunning. It is an American, Monsignor.
Again, a great, great surprise. An American, the prefect of the Congregation of Bishops, who born in Chicago, an Augustinian from a religious order, but moved to Peru as a missionary, and an amazing surprise for the church and the world.
A moderate.
Stunning moment, because of course it used to be said for 2 centuries that the idea of an American Pope was unthinkable, and here we have an American successor of Peter.
I am absolutely stunned. Never thought an American would be Pope.
A dark horse, would be the first American-born Pope, and while he was born in Chicago, he was a missionary. He spent a lot of time in Peru. This will be a continuation of the pastoral approach of Pope Francis, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, we will see what he brings to it. But first of all, I can't believe we have an American Pope. That is just amazing.
Right. Yeah. The likelihood of that was near zero as far as everybody was concerned.
Now, to be fair, I mean, there was a good deal of chatter around Cardinal Prevost, now Papa Prevost, in the run-up to all of this. But of course, you're right. For a long time, the idea was you can never have an American Pope because you can't have a superpower Pope. But, you know, the world has changed in the 21st century. America is no longer the world's lone superpower. And these cardinals don't really care about nationality anyway.
He also knows many of these bishops really well.
Exactly, because he has worked here at the Office of Bishops. That is a vital point. He has pastoral experience in Peru, and he has worked here at the Vatican. That has surely been very decisive.
So the imagery of all those cardinals there, smiling and looking.
Well, I can see Cardinal World there.
World, formerly the Archbishop of Washington. You've got to figure he's an excited man right now.
Oh, I think the American Cardinals must just be thrilled.
Yes. Well, so he has a worldwide sort of point of view. As we said, he did a mission in Peru. He served as the head of the Vatican's very powerful dicastery for bishops under Francis for the past 2 years. What does that mean? What did he do?
Well, essentially, the dicastery for bishops is responsible for naming bishops all around the world. As I like to say, it is a great way to make friends in the Catholic Church.
So he has a lot of friends.
He already plays a big role here at the Vatican, no doubt, so he is well known. And I think, interestingly, too, he was a math major at Villanova, which is important as the Vatican's finances are in trouble.
Oh, he has got quite a number of good things about him. He is also an Augustinian priest.
Which means?
Which is an order, and we were just saying today is one of their special feast
Our Lady of Grace.
And John and I were saying earlier, well, maybe that's a sign. He also studied here at the Angelicum, a Dominican university, so he has quite a number of boxes ticked in that.
And John, you describe him as someone who could put a positive face on the church. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, he is considered a man of great dialogue, a man of great openness, a man of great balance. And let me also say that at a personal level, he is just extremely affable. He is a very nice guy, very easy to like. I think the world will see that tonight.
Cardinal Robert Francis Prevost is the next Holy Father. Seth Doan is in the square with some Americans reacting to this news. Seth?